What's up guys, yeah, welcome to another tutorial. And in this tutorial, just like I promised on IG on Instagram, I said that I was going to do a video tutorial on how you can retouch your image. Yeah, this is what I want you to know. First, I'm no longer a photographer. I used to be a photographer and I was more like an amateur photographer, so I just had to quit. I really never had so much passion for photography, even though I have edited several images, and I'm even going to show some of it to you. I have edited so many images, but I just decided to stick to graphics since that's what I really had passion for. As you can see, majority of these images that you can see here were edited by me. Just a few of them were shot by some other photographers. As you can see, Encourage, you can see Prince Mason, but every other one was shot and edited by myself. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I went about my retouching process. And please, I want you to know that I don't know if this is actually the standard for photographers out there, for big photographers out there, but what I'm doing basically is to teach you how I do my own retouch process, and I think that is fair enough. So this should work well for you as a graphic designer and as an amateur photographer that's just coming up, a newbie in photography. So that's gonna be all. Let's just go straight into today's tutorial. So what we'll be doing is I'm going to be retouching this image of the golden melanin. The golden melanin is actually my friend. She's a good friend of mine, and she used to be my church member before I relocated. So she's a model and she's a good fashion designer. So please do well to check out our page. Do well to follow her on Instagram at the golden melanin _ I am not sure if I'm so correct with the username, but I know her name is the Golden Melanin. So you can just search her on Instagram, you'll find her handle and you can just follow her. And I'm also going to leave a link to our page. So, and at the end of this video, you're going to find a link in the description of the raw file, this raw file. So I'm going to drop this raw file for us. It's actually PSD, so I'm just going to upload the PSD file for us so we can get this image and also try out the process as well. And please, when you are posting this image, do well to reference me and also do well to tag her and reference her in your caption. Please, it's very important because I had to reach out to her to allow us to use this image. So it's not been nice if our images are just flying everywhere and she does not get a credit, and I do not get the credit and she does not get a tag for this image. It won't be so nice at all. So please do well to take note of this. So without any further ado, let's just jump straight into the tutorial. So I shot this image some months ago. I think, yeah, about some month ago, early this year. I shot this image early this year. So this is the camera raw. I shot it on raw. So as a photographer, it's good when you are snapping, always set, especially when it comes to portrait images like this, always leave your camera settings at camera raw, so you can get the highest details as possible. So the first thing I want to do to this image is to go ahead and duplicate the background. And I'm going to go ahead and clean up this image. I'm going to take out all of these pimples and all of these unwanted marks that you can see. So I use the spot healing brush. So go ahead, select the spot healing brush, reduce the size. Don't make the brush size too big. So reduce the size and just start picking them out one after the other. Very simple, very simple. Just go ahead and pick them out. So you don't need to go overboard with it, so you don't end up taking out all of the textures in the image, because the truth is all of these things too are texture, and it's going to contribute to the enhancement of this. It's going to enhance the texture of our skin. So let's just take out these pointy ones and we're going to leave the rest. So I'm going to speed up these parts just to make this tutorial as short as possible. Right, so I'm done cleaning up this image, and there's something I want you to know. I have processed this image because this is not how it was looking after I shot it. It was not so clean and nice like this. I had to do some camera raw process, which I'm not covering in this tutorial because I've actually done a tutorial before where I talked about how to process your image. So I just used the same method to process this image, and that was how we arrived at this place that we are. So I have cleaned up the image, and one thing I like us to know is that when it comes to photography, when it comes to photo retouching, less is more and more is less. That means when you go overboard with it, you tend to destroy the entire image. But when you keep it at a minimal, you ensure that the texture of the skin is still retained, because the skin is basically the most important thing when it comes to photo retouching. So let me hide this layer. You can see this is the before, this is the after. We've taken out all of these parts. This is the before, this is the after, before, after. So the next thing I want to do now is to go ahead and do my frequency separation. So I have this plug-in that I use, but Retouch is not actually for free. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it the manual method. That's for those of us who don't have this plugin. I'm just going to go ahead and do it the manual method. And also, it is important for you to note that I have divided this tutorial into several parts. So the first part, we'll be looking at doing the cleaning, which is what we just did now. The second part is the frequency separation. The third part is the dodge and burn, and the last part is where we're going to do the final processing, and that will be all for this tutorial. So without talking too much, let's just go straight into the next process, which is the frequency separation. So for you to do the frequency separation, what you need to do is this. First, you need to duplicate this layer, this current layer, twice. I've duplicated it, so I'm going to rename one as low. I'll rename the one up as high. So that is the high frequency. Then the lower one is the low frequency, and I can rename this as main edit. That's to show that I have cleaned up this image, as you can see. So I'm going to toggle this on, go over to the low and zoom into the image as close as possible. Then go over to filter, select my blur, and use my Gaussian blur. So I'm going to take the slider down back to 0, and this is what I'm going to work with. This stuff you can see is what I'm going to work with. So as you can see the roughness of the face. So I'm just going to take it over to the part that I have the most roughness, which is this part of our head. So I can zoom in. Then I'm going to increase the radius to a point whereby I can no longer see all of these blemishes. I don't need to go overboard like this. No, it's not when everything is totally wiped. The point where I can no longer notice the blemishes is where I'm going to drag it to. So let's do that. I can still notice it. I can still see it. Yeah, it's beginning to fade off now gradually, but I can still see it now. When I got to 6, I think 6 is good, but let us see 7. Now 7 is perfect. As you can see, everything is looking mopped out already, and it is looking blur already as we want. So this is okay for me. 7. Then I'm going to click on OK. Now this part is blur, but you don't notice it because we still have the high frequency toggled on. So I can turn it off. You can see the blurriness of the low image. You can see that it's looking even sweet despite the fact that it is actually blurred out. So the next thing I want to do is to toggle on the high frequency, then go over to image, scroll down to apply image. Then under the apply image, this is how it will look like. Now under the apply image, under the layer, you change it to low, meaning you want to apply what is on the low on the high frequency now. Then under the blending mode, go over to subtract, and always set your scale to 2. This one should be a fixed value, scale to 2, and offset at 129. So it will look like this gray, like this. You see this gray, or yeah, this gray scale. You see this gray color. Then that means it is good to go. Then click on OK. Now that I've done that, I'll just come over to where I have my blend mode, and I'm going to change this to linear light. So after you've changed this to linear light, it will look as if though you've never done anything on this image. As you can see, everything is just the way it was before and look like we didn't do anything at all. Now it's cool, it's perfect. Then the next thing we need to do now is we'll now run our dodge, our frequency separation. But before I run the frequency separation actually work with the part where we have, because when we start brushing, we'll brush the part where there's light and the part that is dark. But how do we know? How are we so sure that, okay, this part we call light is actually the light? We need to add a layer on top that I call the checker layer. So go over to the adjustment layer, then add the black and white. So under the black and white, just pull this red slider down to make it darker. So as you can see that it is now obvious, we can now know that, okay, this part of the image is dark and this part of the image is bright. Let me use my tab, my graphics tab, so I can illustrate better. So you can notice that this part of the image, let me reduce my brush size. This part of the image has lights. See all of this part, it has lights. This part so has lights. This place is dark, kind of. Where else? You can see same thing on our body. You can notice that some parts are light, some parts are dark. So that's just basically what we are going to be doing. We're going to brush all of these parts. And now there's something you need to take note of. When you are brushing the image, you should not brush the highlights into the shadows. Now the shadows is the dark part of the image and the highlights is the bright part of the image. So you should ensure that you don't brush any of them into themselves. So what I mean in other words is, when you are brushing the light part, just brush the white part, the light part alone. When you are brushing the dark part, brush the dark part. So let me take this layer off. Now, for us to brush this, we are not going to be using the regular brush that we have. We're going to use the one that says mixer brush. Now under mixer brush, you need to do these settings. Come over to the property panel, choose clean brush, and toggle off this one. Ensure that this is the only one that is selected. Ensure this is the only thing that is selected. Change your weight to 9%. You can leave this value as fixed values. 9%. Let your load be 75%. Your mix should be 90%, and your flow should be 100. The only thing that is changing is the wetness of your brush. So that should be at 9%. Now, after we've done that, let's go ahead and group all of these 3 layers together. So we'll rename this as frequency separation. This is a huge secret, as many photographers don't like to teach this, but I'm teaching this because I want you to grow and I want your image to be very good whenever you're working with images. So now I've selected the low layer. What I'm going to do now is, everything we are going to be doing on this image is going to be applied on the low layer only and not on the high layer. So we don't have business with the high layer and with the checker, which is the black and white layer that we added. We are going to do everything basically on the low layer. So now I've selected my brush, which is the mixer brush tool. Ensure that you take note of all of these settings as well. So I'm going to zoom in and start brushing on the image. You might not notice any changes yet until you get to a certain level where you begin to notice it. So let's brush on the image. So this is the highlights. I'm brushing the highlights. You can use your mouse. It's not a must you have a graphics tab, but I love to use my graphics tab because it's always so precise, since it's me controlling it by myself. Not like sometimes that you want the mouse to do a particular thing for you, to draw a particular thing for you, but you'll not be able to do it. So if you notice, that it's beginning to change, and I'm brushing constantly on the highlights alone. I'm not moving into the dark part yet. I'm brushing on this part. Now I can move into the dark parts. Let's brush this part. So let me do this brushing a little bit. Then I'm going to show you the before and after so you can notice the changes. Now look at this part of our head. Let me go ahead and toggle. Let me take this black and white up. Now let me go ahead and toggle this off. You notice some changes. Let me zoom in properly. You notice some changes. This is the before, this is the after. You can see that the image is getting better. Yes, but there's even more that we can do. Still on the low layer, select your mixer brush again, and now start brushing on the next pass. So I'm going to take, I always love to take it part by part. So I'm going to work on our forehead now for now. Then I'm going to move to other parts of our head And as we all know, photographers really love to work on the face of the model. Most of the times they love to work on the face of the model. So I'm going to work on our face, and every other thing we'll be doing will just be minimal. That's on our skin, on the body of the model. So let me brush this part as well. As you can see, it's beginning to make sense. Everything is beginning to look very cool. I'm just going to keep brushing until when I notice that, okay, yes, it is looking good already, and I can move to the next part. So zooming out, you can see that it's beginning to make much more sense. Let me brush it further, as we're still going to do some final clean ups before we export the image as the final results, before we export the final results. So as I'm doing this, you notice that it's looking as if I'm moving from the highlights to the shadows. I'm not really pushing them into them. So what I'm just trying to do is to ensure that there's a blend between, that there's a kind of gradual movement between the highlights and the shadows, such that it looks like a gradient and you cannot really tell when you are in the lights and when you are in the dark part already. So I'm done with our forehead. Let me just make it much more perfect. I'm done with our forehead. Now I can move to every other part, but before I do that, let me show you the before. You can see this is the after, this is the before. See how rough it's looking, but this is the after. You can see how smooth it is looking now. So it's more like we are blending the images, we are blending our skin together. So now I can move to another part, still on the low layer, select my brush. I'm going to brush this part down, this the nose bone or whatever it is called. So I'm going to brush it straight, then I can brush the highlights too. I'm going to brush the highlight. I'm not going to do too much on the nose because it's very easy for you to destroy the nose. It's very easy for you to destroy the nose. So I'm just going to do it gently. Let me do this area as well. Let me do around her eyes. Yeah. So then I'm going to move to other parts of her face. I'm blending this together since this is where we have more of light. And there's one thing, if you're a photographer, there's something you should notice. There's something you should work on when you are working with images. When you're working on a shoot, it is good that you get a good makeup artist. Though this makeup was done by she herself. She did the makeup herself. So as a photographer, it's very important that you get a good makeup artist whenever you want to do shoot, because there's one thing I noticed, that is when you have good makeup, you have just less work to do as a photographer. When you're retouching your images, you have just little things to do, so you don't need to go overboard with everything. So I don't know if you notice at any point it looks like my brush is not moving, but trust me, it's actually moving, and I'm actually brushing on the image. So it's not like it's just static, but I feel maybe the recording software I am using is not doing justice to that. So you might not be able to see the movement of my brush, but it is actually moving. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the brushing on the image. Ensure that you don't brush the light into the dark part, you don't brush the shadow into the highlights. Ensure that you don't do that. So let me go ahead and also do the frequency separation for this part of our mouth. Yeah, so I think I'm almost good with this. I'm almost fine with it. So the next thing I want to do now is to move to these other parts of our face. I want to also ensure that it is perfect. Yeah, I want to smoothen it as much as I can do to ensure that everything rhymes. So you can see that it's beginning to pop. It's beginning to make more sense. The more I brush, ensure that you're not brushing the highlights into the shadows. Just brush them individually, and you can always move to another part if you need to brush that part as well. So now this is it. Almost done with this part. Yeah, I'm almost done with this part. So let me move over to our chin. Then after this part, I'm going to speed up this tutorial so we don't spend the whole time on this part. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the rest for our body. I just want us to see our face and see how it looks like. So Let me zoom out a little bit. As you can see, look at the way the image is looking like, the way it's looking like now. If I toggle this off, you see the before, you can see that our face is kind of rough. And toggling on, you can see the smoothness of the face already. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up this tutorial. I'm just going to go ahead and do the rest of the other parts by myself. All right. All right. All right. So, all right, guys. So I'm done with the frequency separation. As you can see, I've completed everything. So let me toggle this off. You can see this is the before, this is the after. This is the before, and this is the after. So you can see that it's very perfect now. So I can now go ahead and take off this black and white. You can see how the image, how the skin looks like, how sweet, how neat it looks like. So this is what frequency separation can do to your image. As you can see, the image looks so perfect. Let me zoom out a little bit and show you before. This is the before, this is the after. This is the before, this is the after again. You can see that the skin is now enhanced and looks so nice. So now at this point we can just do some final fixes. So I'm just going to go ahead and merge this layer. That's Control Shift Alt E. So it will merge the layer up without altering the frequency separation layer. So I can hide this. So I'm just going to do some cleaning on this image just to ensure that everything is perfect. So I'm going to use my spot healing tool again, reduce my brush size and just tap. So I'll just tap on the spot I want to take off. These things are textures, so don't go overboard with it. Don't try to attenuate everything. Just the ones that you feel are too pointed, just take them out. So that's what I'm just doing basically. I'm not trying to mop out the whole image. As you can see, I'm just picking those ones that are pointed. Those ones that look pointed are the ones I'm picking out. All right, so I'm just trying to attenuate those pointed areas. Let me see if there are more. Okay, let me go over to our notes. I think we have little more here that we can take out as well. So I'm just going to clean them up very quickly. I'm not doing so much on it. I just don't want them to be pointed as it's appearing at the moment. So this is cool. This is okay for me. So the next thing I want to do now is, I think I'm fine with this image and I don't want to do too much with it. The skin is perfect and okay. So the next thing I want to do now is to do my dodge and burn. That is the next part of this stuff that we're doing. So I'm going to do the dodge and burn, and dodge and burn is another way to further enhance the image. So here's what for dodge and burn does to my own image. So basically it makes my image shiny. That's the first thing. It makes my image shiny. Then secondly, which is the major reason why which is the major reason why we use this is because what one thing dodge and burn does basically when it comes to photography is that it helps you highlight the highlighted areas and help you darken the shadows. So it kind of creates this dimension such that the image is not flat in the sense that everything is just not just looking blended. At least some parts should pop than the other. You might not really understand what I'm saying, but when I start working on it now, you understand. So for us to do the dodge and burn, this is very simple. What we need to do is this. So just follow my step. Now what we need to do is go over to the adjustment panel, the adjustment layer, and select the curve. Now the first one is the burn, which is for the shadow. We're going to use it to darken the shadow. So I'm going to pull it down a little bit to make it darker, like this. I think it's fine. Invert it by using Control I. So I have automatically inverted it. So I have darkened this a little bit. As you can see, I've pulled this down just to darken it a little bit. So I've inverted it. Then the next one, let us rename it. Name it as burn, which is for the shadow. You can further rename it and add just to help you understand. So let me add brackets. Sorry, let me add the brackets so you can understand. Dark. Yeah. So then we're going to create another one, another curve adjustment layer, but this time around we're going to push this one up to brighten the image a little bit, not too much as it will wipe out the image. So just somewhere around here, just above the one we did initially. So we're going to invert that to Control I to invert, and we're going to save this as dodge. We're going to rename this to dodge, and in brackets we can put highlight or brighten, whatever, just to make you understand. So now having done that, we still need this black and white layer, so that is why it's going to be here. But what we need to do now is toggle on this black and white. So what we're going to do basically, for the dark, we're going to brush on these places that are dark already, these places that we have darkness, like we have shadows. We're going to brush on it. Then for the dodge, we are going to brush on these parts where there's light, just to make the image better. So you might not really see the significance of this until when we start doing it. But this time we are not using the mixer brush tool. We are using the normal brush tool, but it kind of reduced opacity. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick the brush tool. That's the regular brush tool that we know. I'm going to select the brush tool. Then under the property, I'm going to change the opacity to 50. This is what I do basically, and I feel you can adopt it too as well, to 50. And I'm going to change my flow to somewhere around 10. Yeah, to somewhere around 10. So I've done that. Still, while I still have my brush selected, let me just zoom into the image. Don't forget, we are doing the highlight first, then we are coming over to the shadows. So I'm just going to use my brush to brush on the parts that we have lights. So don't forget, just this area, as you can see light, you're going to brush on it. but don't do it too much, just to at least enhance it. And also ensure that when you've inverted, ensure that your foreground color is set at white, not black. If it is set at black, you would not notice any change. It will not do anything. So it has to be inverted. Since we have black here, the foreground color has to be in white. So I've toggled it and changed it to white. Now we can start brushing. Don't go overboard with it, just brush softly. You might not notice the changes now, but when we are done, you'll notice it. So you'll notice some white stuff on this layer, on the curves layer. So that's to show you that what you are doing is working. So if you don't find it at any point, just know that there's something wrong with your design. There's something wrong with your curves adjustment layer. So I'm trying to brush the center of our head. I know that. So I'm trying to brush the center of her head because actually I noticed that that place is dark, but I feel the forehead should be shiny and not the way it's looking like. So you can see that it's beginning to shine and make more sense. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it for this other part too, where we have light. That's on the nose. So it's more like contouring. It is called contouring, dodge and burn. Contouring, dodge and burn. So this helps us pop the areas where we have highlights and darken the areas where we have shadows. That's what it does basically. So let me do the same thing here. I'm just trying not to go overboard with it so I don't destroy the image, because there's a level you do the dodge and burn so that you can eventually destroy the entire image. You can destroy the beauty of the image, but I'm going to try as much as possible not to destroy this image. Alright, so I think I'm done with that part. Let me go over here. I think I'm okay for the face. So let me just go ahead and do the same thing for the part of our body where we have light. So I'm just going to go ahead and dodge those areas where we have light. Somewhere like here. Somewhere like here. Somewhere like here. Somewhere around our shoulder and this part of our neck. Here as well. Here as well. Here as well. Alright, so I'm gonna leave the other parts the way it is. So I'm just dodging this part. Okay, over to our cleavage too. You can see that there's light on this area. We're gonna do the same for this area as well, but don't go overboard with it, because like I said, you can do it too much and eventually destroy the whole image. So I think I'm done with the highlights. So I'm just gonna move to the bone. Oh, I'm not trying to select her mask. So I'm moving to the bone. Now you can see, you notice some drawings on this place. That's to show what we've done so far. So for the bone, I'm just going to brush on the areas that are dark. So that most of the times is area like this, around the head, like around the face is always dark. So let's just do that. I'm not doing it too much, so don't destroy the image. I'm going to zoom in to my nose, this nose bone, just straight down. I'm going to do the same. I think it's becoming too much. Yeah, straight down. Yeah, this area as well, and these areas. This place is cool. Yeah, so moving over to our body. Our body, somewhere like this. Let's go to this part of our body. This part as well. This part as well. So those are areas that we need to focus on. Those are areas that we need to focus on. So I feel this is good, as I don't want to do it too much. So now let me go ahead and group this together. So we can rename this as dodge and burn. Dodge and burn. Yeah, so let me take off this black and white so we can look at it. Now look at the way the image is looking. Now this is the new image. Now this was the way it was looking before. You can notice the grace change. You can see that it's now popped and even made more sense the way it is now. So we've corrected everything, and we've taken the image from looking like this to looking like this. Okay, let me merge this together. So we've taken the image from looking like this initially, with the way everything is looking like, to looking like this. You can see that we've done so much on this image, and it is so neat and so crispy, and it looks eatable. Alright, so that's just on the lighter note. So everything is perfect now. going to do after the dodge and burn is very simple. We are not doing much. We are just doing the final processes, because the most important things that we should have done on the image is what we've done already, which is the frequency separation and the dodge and burn. So let me go ahead and delete the frequency separation folder and the dodge and burn as well. So we have what we need already. So this is what we need. We just go ahead and perfect the image. So what I want to do now is to work on the eyes. I want the eyes to pop. So here's what I always do. I make these areas, the white areas, whiter, and this area, I don't know if it is called iris or pupil, this lights, this kind of red area, I'm going to pop that part as well. So for me to do that, the first thing I want to do is to go over to the adjustment layer. I'm going to use the photo filter, but I'm going to change the color to blue. You can see it's blue already. The image is looking blue. Let's leave that the way it is. I'm also going to go over to vibrance. Then I'm going to drop the saturation to -100. So let me bring this blue filter on top so the blueness can be applied on top. Now the next thing I want to do is brightness and contrast. I'll increase the brightness a little bit, then increase the contrast to a little bit. So I haven't done all of this. I'm going to go ahead and group these three things together. Then I can rename it as heights. Now that I've done that, I'm going to add I'm going to add a layer mask on it, such that whatever is applied will be applied to, then I can invert. So now I have everything. Whatever I do here is going to be applied on the rest. So I just want to move over to the eyes now and brush with my brush tool. I can bring everything back to default 100, my flow 100, reduce my brush size. Now then brush on the parts, the white parts. So you notice that the eyes will even start looking much more better. Yeah, as you can see, it's looking much more better already. Yeah, it's looking better. Just try as much as possible not to go out of the image itself. So you can see that the eyes is looking better compared to this one. You can see. Let's do more. Let's do for the second eyes as well. I'm not going to touch this place because the white did not get there. So ensure that you don't convert, don't make the image something else. Ensure you make it as possible. So, let me do for this part as well. I'm just whitening it here. Yeah, this part of our eye, so I'm going to whiten it. Let me see if I did for this. Okay, I'm going to whiten it as well. Okay, so I'm done with making our eyes white. This is cool. I can go ahead and merge it. Ctrl E. I've merged it together. Look at before. This is the after, before, after. So moving on, I want to make even the eyes much more better. So I'm going to go ahead and add hue and saturation. I'm going to increase my saturation to somewhere around this color. Yeah, everything is looking reddish already, but what I want to apply is basically on the eyes and some part of our lips. So I'm going to go ahead and invert, Ctrl I. So I'm going to go in, zoom into our eye area. Then the same thing, I'm just going to brush around. I'm going to brush around just to make the red in our eyes pop. I'll do the same here. I'll brush around to make the red pop. So zooming out, you can see that the red has popped and the image is looking even better. So there's something else I used to do. Let me merge this first. There's something else I do. I'm going to create an empty layer. I want to create the lines in the eyes. So I'm going to pick my brush to ensure that it is white. Reduce the opacity. I'm going to reduce it, my brush size, and zoom in further into the image. And so I'm just going to go ahead and mimic the way the eyes is. So you know these lines in the eyes now. So I'm just going to draw it. That's what I'm trying to do with my pen. I'll go over to the other part of our eye and I'm going to draw the same. I'll draw the same. So after I've done that, now it is looking unrealistic. It is looking unrealistic. So I'm going to go ahead and blur it out. Go over to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. But I'm I'm going to make the blur too much. As you can see that it's appeared completely, so I don't want this. I want it to be visible at least. So bringing it down to somewhere around 2.7 is cool. Okay, then I'm going to change the blend mode to somewhere around overlay. Basically, just depends on what works fine. So I think soft light is cool. So toggling off, toggling on, you can see that it has enhanced the image. So you can see that the eyes is now looking better from looking like this to looking like this. So that is all for the eyes. Now we'll just do some final perfection, and that will be all for this image, because what I just want to teach us is how to enhance our image. So there's something I always do. I always try to balance the color. So I had an empty layer and I can say skin color. I can rename it as skin color. So what I do is I select my brush tool, then sample the area of the skin that has one of the best colors. So I like these parts. I like this part. Let's see the color. Okay, let's pick this part. This color is even much more better. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply it on that skin, especially those places that are very dark. I'm going to change it to soft light. So I'm just going to brush it on those areas of our skin that are very dark. I don't worry about what the outcome will look like. So just on the areas that are very dark, that we have this kind of black feelings there. So that's what I'm going to do. Do the same here. The same here. This part of our hand as well. Yeah, this part as well. This part. Moving up. This part of my head. This part of my head. So now I'm going to reduce the opacity of that layer to ensure that at least it blends properly with our skin, such that it's not noticeable. So somewhere around here is cool. Toggle off, toggle on, you can almost see, you can't find it. So this is cool for me. Let me go ahead and merge it with this layer. So you can see this is before and this is after, before, after. So final edits, and that will be all. So I'm going to use camera raw filter to do the last processing. So let me go over to camera raw filter and just make the image. I'm just going to finalize everything I've done, just to put some kind of dimensions and some kind of harmony in the image. So that's what I want to do basically. So I'm waiting for the camera raw to load up and we can do the final fix, and that'll be all. So yeah, we are here in camera raw. I'm going over to my exposure, push up the exposure a little bit, increase my contrast a little bit, drop my highlights. I don't like so much highlights in my image. Yeah, this is cool. I'll push up the shadow because I don't want anything to be hidden. I'll drop the whites. I'll drop the black to make it darker. That's what I feel like. That is how I edit my image. So you can try what works best for you. Increase my clarity to somewhere around 6. My vibrance to somewhere around 5. My saturation somewhere around 5 as well. So that is for the basic editing. Then I'm moving over to the details. I'm going to sharpen the image, not too much, but somewhere around 34 is cool for me. That's for this image. Somewhere around this value is cool for me. Noise reduction, I don't think there's any noise in this image. So color mixing, I can now play with my greens. I can play with the colors around. So let me play with the greens. For instance, I want the green to look like this. Yes, that's for the hue. Then I'll increase the saturation to make it even greener. For the red, I'm going to increase the saturation of the red and make it even much deeper. Let me see if I can play with the hues. Okay, I don't want to tamper with it because, oh, sorry, I was tampering with the orange. That was not what I was supposed to tamper with. So for the reds, something around here. Let's see how this feels. I think this is good. All right, so that's just basically the colors that we have here. That will be all for color mixer. Then over to effect, I'm just gonna add a little bit of vignetting around the edges, and that will be all. So okay, So this is how the final image looks like. So this is the before, this is the after, this is the before, this is the after. You can see that this image makes sense. Okay, so I can say as a photographer, even if you are able to pull up a image like this and it looks like this, when you're trying, you just need to do more to get the best out of your photography career. And this is nice, at least for a start. This is good for a start. So that will be all for this tutorial, guys. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link that's going to lead you to the raw image of this picture. I'm not going to drop the final image. I'm not going to drop this one. I'm not going to leave this, so that you can be true to yourself when you are trying to assess and see how well you edited. So you can, but I'm going to post this on my Instagram, so you can always access it and be able to compare and see if you actually did a good job. So I'm going to leave a link to this image. Also, I'm going to leave a link to this model's page. Please do well to follow her, do well to follow me as well. And also don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this, because even the next tutorial is going to be so much superb, as we're going to creating an event flyer and we're going to fuse a little bit of Afro futuristic into, just a little bit of Afro into our design. So we're going to use the same model image, but we are not retouching since we already have the final image. So thank you so much for staying to the end of this tutorial. Don't forget to follow me on all my social media platforms, and I'm going to see you in the next tutorial. Peace out.